Today we begin with Job 4, and the goal is to get somewhat through the dialogues of Job. The difficulty here is twofold. First, understanding the thought world in which the characters are presented as working. And second, to get a grasp on what's going on as the dialogues unfold. So I have, of course, on the PowerPoint material which I've sent to Timothy this morning. He may not have them yet. I don't know how long it takes an email to get from here to there, but we'll start working on this. I need to be able to share my screen. Okay, now we can do it. All right. Let's see. I think I'm going to fiddle with this just slightly before I do that. Here we go. Oh, there it is. Okay. I couldn't find the screen that I was looking for. Now I'm ready. We have in the book of Job a series of three I'm not sure quite how to describe it now. My language is leaving me here. But as you see on the screen, three cycles of speeches. Each speaker speaks in turn. Eliphaz, then Bildad, then Zophar. After each speech, Job speaks. I know this is very rudimentary. All of you are fully aware of this material that I'm talking about right this minute. But in the process, effectively, Job has begun the whole issue immediately in chapter 3. His dialogue, his monologue there in chapter 3, longing that he had not even been born, or that the day had dropped out of the calendar, or that he could have died at birth. All of that begins, in effect, opens the door for the three friends to respond and to address him. In the presence of great suffering, silence is often the best minister. And in a sense, it would have been so much better for Job if they had just kept their mouths shut. But as we shall see, and as we mentioned last week in chapter 42, this is such a strange thing. We read God saying twice to the three friends, "You have not spoken of me what is right, as my servant Job has." But as we shall see in various places, Job comes to, I'm hard pressed to explain how Job is not in fact blaspheming in some places. And the three friends actually speak truth at times. And so how do you sort this all out? How do you handle this? And it's challenging, of course, for all of us as we think about these things. So first cycle is going to be chapters 3 to 14. I'm heavily dependent upon Roy Zook. His last name is spelled Z-U-C-K. I had 2 courses at Dallas in which he taught this material. One course that was a monster course. Jonathan, you'll remember Old Testament history too, and poetry. So monster course begins with the book of Samuel and goes through the book of Song of Solomon. The only thing we don't deal with there is Psalms, because Psalms is treated in the Hebrew courses. But he dealt with that in that course. And then I took an elective course with him on wisdom literature, and he dealt with it again there. So he's just had a heavy, he's left heavy fingerprints all over my thinking about Job. I can hardly think about Job without Roy Zook. His book, very brief book, tiny little book, is available, I think, probably on Amazon if you want to order it. His name is Zuck, and it's very creatively titled Job. But it's that was supposed to be a joke. Thank you. The electronics getting from here to there are a little slower than the face is. But it's in the Every Man's Bible Commentary series. It's published by Moody Press. It may be only available in used form, but I can hardly think of a better book to suggest to you for the book of Job than that. He was heavily dependent on another book, which I also have. It's harder to get hold of, but it's available in used form. It's titled The Argument of the Book of Job Unfolded. It's by William Henry Green, W.H. Green. And this is not a commentary on the book. The various chapters are sorted out this way in Green's work. There are 10 chapters. The first is Job's happy estate, then Satan. Third chapter, Job in affliction. And then fourth chapter, Job's three friends, Job's conflict, Job's triumph. Job refutes the friends, Elihu, the Lord. And so in effect, he follows the route of the book, but he will stop and talk to you. He doesn't comment so much on what each of the friends is saying, but he's talking about their message, encapsulating it for us. And it's really a fine work. It's from the 1890s or so. So I highly recommend those two books on Job. In the first cycle of speeches, the friends state basic principles, and the process here is for Eliphaz to start. As you know, Eliphaz always has the longest speech, and his speeches get shorter and shorter as he goes through the three cycles. And Eliphaz sets the tone of the first cycle, each cycle, in fact, all three. In the first cycle, he says, now, Job, we all know there are some basic truths you know and we know. In fact, everyone knows, and you need to respond to this suffering in light of these basic principles that everyone knows. Bildad then follows and echoes in a briefer message than Eliphaz gives. He follows and echoes Eliphaz, and then Zophar is the shortest speaker of each cycle. Job, of course, as you know, responds in between, and Job's speeches get longer and longer as the three friends' speeches get shorter and shorter. So there's a strategy as these things unfold. The first cycle then states principles. The second cycle begins insinuation. Job, you know that there's something wrong in your life or you wouldn't be suffering like this. So they're insinuating. They're not making any charges, but they know, and Job knows, that there is a certain kind of justice in the world, and that justice works. And if you don't live according to that justice, then this kind of thing happens. And so you ought to draw the right conclusions. Job responds, Bildad speaks, Job responds, Eliphaz, Zophar speaks, and you come to the end of the second cycle, chapters 15 to 21. And then the third cycle, which is incomplete, chapters 22 to 31, are open accusation. Eliphaz begins to make specific charges. This is what you had. Anybody who suffers like this, has done these kinds of sins. Everybody knows this. And Job, you've got to come to grips with your own sin. Job responds, Bildad gives his speech. In the third cycle, Zophar doesn't speak. There is a kind of strategy. If you turn, how far back shall I have you turn? Let's see. Let's go to chapter 29. I mean, that's probably too early, too late. Let me see. Where shall we go here? Let's go to 25. Job 25 with the beginning of Bildad's last speech, and you'll see Bildad's speech, even with the introduction, is only 6 verses long. So then Bildad the Shuhite answered, dominion and awe belong to him. So we know that Bildad is speaking. Chapter 26, verse 1, then Job responded. And I go to chapter 27, verse 1. Normally, after a speech, one of the friends speaks. Well, after one of Job's responses, one of Job's friends speaks. But I have the same statement in verse 27, or chapter 27, verse 1. Then Job continued his discourse, and it appears here that Job stopped for Zophar to speak, but Zophar didn't speak. Chapter 28 is a bit of a difficult passage to know what to do with. It would appear that this is part of Job's dialogues, but there are some oddities in chapter 28 that may suggest that it's the author of the book of Job who is giving this, what you might call a soliloquy on wisdom. Where can wisdom be found? My text has a heading for chapter 28, Job tells of earth's treasures. That's a peculiarly bad heading for that chapter. The question is, the earth is full of treasures, and every man has been able to search out all the treasures except one, and that's wisdom. And no one can find wisdom. Then you have again in chapter 29, and Job again took up his discourse and said. So it appears that there are places where Job stops in speaking in order for Zophar to respond, but he never does in this last cycle. So these 3 cycles, as we will look at them, we'll look at them in chunks, not piecemeal. So we can get through this by next week. The alternation in speakers, Job always speaks first. So Job speaks first, chapter 3, then Eliphaz, then Job again, Bildad responds, then Job again, Zophar responds. The friends always follow in the same order, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. Job and Eliphaz always speak longest, with Job's speeches lengthening as the others shorten. Eliphaz proposes the themes of the 3 cycles as we've just suggested. He argues from his great fund of wisdom gained from many years of experience. And that's always very valuable in the midst of suffering. When you're hurting, you want to hear what's wrong with you. And I know this because I'm so old and I have experienced so much of life. I can tell you what's going on here. That's just, they're sorry physicians. So, but generally he's more gentle than the rest. He's more urbane in that positive sense of urbane. He wants to speak the truth as he understands it. He wants to speak the truth, but he wants to do it in as gentle a way as possible. The theology of the 4, this is pretty important, guys. They believe in one kind of justice only, retributive or remunerative justice. They are related. They're not identical. Retributive justice would be giving to the evil what they deserve in terms of punishment. Remunerative justice would be giving to the righteous what they deserve in terms of reward. So to remunerate your salary, if you get a salary, your salary is your remuneration for your work for the period, for the pay period. Retribution is punishment for sin. And so they all four of these men are committed to the concepts of remunerative and retributive justice. God blesses the righteous and curses the wicked. Therefore, blessed people are clearly righteous and cursed people are clearly wicked. Something occurred to me as God blesses. This is the theology. I'm trying to think of the term of, I can't think of the term. You do good to get good, and you do evil and you get evil. So you do good to get good. Can't think of the term. It'll come to me after a while. Job is not teaching that concept, as you know, but the three friends hold that idea. We might have mentioned that concept when we were talking about Proverbs, because it is a big problem in Proverbs. It seems to say in Proverbs that if you do good, you will get good. And if you do evil, you will get evil. And so all you do in that kind of setting is you spur people to do good for all the wrong motives, for self-interest, for self-reward. And when you teach that, it's number one, it's going to fall apart in the lives of the people that you teach, because there will be people who are very good people whose lives fall apart. And then you will be left with this, what is the term? Eudaimonism. I know that's probably a primary word in your vocabulary, so let me spell it. E-U-D-A-I-M-O-N-I-S-M. Eudaimonism. E-U-D-A-I-M-O-N-I-S-M. Eudaimonism. You do good to get good. If that were God's principle of working with people on earth, then there would not be any genuine love. There would be no genuine righteousness in the world. We would simply be working for our own benefit. Everyone would be working. Yeah, that's the way it is now. We assume that if I work hard and do a good job, then I'm going to get benefits. And generally speaking, we do in the workplace, but that doesn't always happen. And so if I teach this from the pulpit, if I teach this in the Bible class, I'm going to have people who are serving the Lord solely for the benefit they can get out of God. They're using him as a dispensary for goods. They have no real commitment to God. They have no real faith in God. And so it will be damaging to all of life. But these men, including Job, all start with the theology of eudaimonism. You do good, you get good. You do evil, you get evil. And so Job is suffering evil. He must have done something bad. They're working on this principle from the very beginning of their speeches. What we're going to have to see is that the book of Job is teaching a different kind of justice in God. Let me see. In fact, we'll come to that a little bit later, so I'll wait for that. But be prepared. We've got to have a better concept of justice. Not all suffering is for evil doing. If that were the case, then the sufferings of Jesus would be because he was a bad person. And that cannot be true. Jesus is the primary point that demolishes the concept of eudaimonism. Jesus did good to get hatred in his incarnation, even from his own family. Now, Bildad and Zophar, Bildad, and these two always follow Eliphaz's lead. Bildad cites the lessons of history. He has studied history, and all of history is on the side of the righteous. Go back as far as you want to know. Go back to all the elders that you knew when you were a boy, when you were just a stripling of a youth. Go back and think about what the elders taught back then. Oh my, they taught. They all the ages teach that you do good, you get good, you do bad, you get evil. So Bildad teaches, and it's so comforting, it's so encouraging, to have someone say, all of history is against you. And then Zophar expounds what he knows. He's the dogmatist. As far as I have seen, this is the way it is. So it's a mercy that he spoke as little as he did in the book. Perhaps his judgment will be less severe than the others, but Zophar is the dogmatist. They both are more disrespectful than Eliphaz, and their disrespectful treatment of Job increases as they go through the cycles. Zophar does not speak, as we've said in the third cycle. The friends, Job is suffering greatly. Here is their basic way of thought. The problem they have, guys, is, are there any ladies with us today? I don't. Yes, Sister Eva, good to have you here. So I will include you too. All of the friends start with the same theology. The three comforters, can I call them that legitimately? The three comforters know something's wrong. And so they change their opinion of Job. Job knows something is wrong, and he changes his opinion of God. Then God shows up and changes everything. So we'll see that as it goes. But all four of them start out, and I'm not leaving out Elihu. Elihu will leave till next week. But at the beginning, all four friends start with this basic way of thinking. Job is suffering greatly. We know that God only curses the wicked. And curse is the right term. I mentioned to you last week that the sores that Job suffered are the curses of the covenant in Deuteronomy 28, and they are also the one of the plagues on Egypt in Exodus. So curse is the right word here. God only curses the wicked. We don't know what sin Job has committed, though we have known him for a long time. But he must be a great sinner since he suffers so greatly. Even Job himself will raise this question. What have I done? Why are you chasing me? So, Brother Sukumar, you wanted to make a comment? Mike? Turn your mic on.
Yeah, if I'm not interrupting the flow, I have a question, brother.
Yes.
When we learned the OT survey, we placed Job in before Abraham.
Yes.
And maybe his contemporary. But do you think the curses of the covenant, not keeping the covenant, would affect Job in that way?
No, not as you stated, but neither were the Egyptians under the covenant. So these are statements of how God acts. What I'm concerned about in this kind of setting, brother, is I'm an ancient Jew, ancient Israelite reading the book of Job. I know the books of Exodus and Deuteronomy. So this is the way I would perceive what the author of Job has written. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Oh, okay, brother, I understand.
So there's a hermeneutically quite sound ground for thinking in those terms, though frankly, I don't know when the book of Job was written. Job is not even an Israelite. He's apparently from the area of someplace in Moab or Seir. I don't know where. I don't know who he is. I don't know how he came to know the Lord. He's an anomaly in the Old Testament. He's a strange character. So Job is suffering greatly. We know that God only curses the wicked. We don't know what sin Job has committed, though we've known him for a long time. But he must be a great sinner since he suffers so greatly. So they changed their view of reality. They have known Job well enough to know that he is not a wicked man. They know that. But they know there's something wrong in the situation. The situation confronts them with a man known to be righteous who is suffering what they believe wicked people only suffer. Only wicked people suffer. So how can he be suffering what only the wicked suffer? And yet all of our knowledge of him is that he's a righteous man. Well, they live at some distance from each other. And some distance doesn't have to be large in the culture. You know how far you can walk in a day? Do you know what a good day's walk would be for an adult man?
I actually forgot.
Yeah. In terms of miles, it's about 20 miles. Right. So assuming, so by the way, that means that if they only live 3 miles away, they're an hour's walk away. How often do you travel places where it takes you an hour to get there? I rarely travel any place that it takes me an hour to get there and an hour to get back. Yes? Are you with me? Yeah. I'll drive 30 minutes in Memphis because 30 minutes is not it's not a long trip. And we've got good highways. So it's relatively easy to drive 30 miles in 30 minutes. So I can do that, but I don't drive an hour very often to go anyplace. So these fellows might be 5 or 6 miles away, and that would be a couple of hours walk. And then they've communicated back and forth with each other, and they've set a time to actually meet with Job. Yes. So there's been a good deal, a flurry of interaction going on. I can't make it then, but I can make it here. And so I don't know how many hours have elapsed. A few days have elapsed between the time he is stricken with this horrible suffering and they actually arrive. And when they get there, they sit for 2 weeks. They said a week or 2 weeks? 2 weeks. Okay. They sit for 2 weeks, which is probably the best thing they did in that whole situation. But eventually, finally, Job speaks, and that opens the door for them to speak. So they know, they have enough long-term memory of who Job is to know that he's a righteous man. They know they have to change something that they're thinking. They cannot give up their theology, so they change what they think about God, or rather, what they think about Job. Job, on the other hand, thinks, I'm suffering greatly. We know that God only curses the wicked. I don't know any sin for which God would curse me, but he has cursed me since I suffer so greatly. Therefore, he uses his wisdom and power for injustice. And that's going to be specifically what Job says in chapter 9 and chapter 10. those I want to spend a little bit of time with because of their importance in the argument of Job. He changes his view of reality. Both of them have to change. Great suffering requires a reassessment of what you think is real and true and meaningful. And in the midst of great suffering, you may change your view of what's happening here on this earth. So the friends do that. Job has to be a wicked man, though we have no evidence against him except his suffering. Job changes his view of reality, but in a different way. I know I haven't done anything that deserves this kind of judgment. So God must not be what I thought he was. He's going to change his theology. Which one's right? Of those two changes, which is correct?
Both are wrong.
Both are wrong. Who said that?
John Babu.
Oh, John Babu. Yeah, both are wrong. And that's the critical point for us. And that's what makes Job 42 so difficult. How can I say both are wrong and then say what, then explain what God said in 42? You have not said of me what is right, as my servant Job has. So one of our tasks is there's a story told of an uneducated pastor who was having a very educated man into his pulpit one Sunday, and he was introducing him, and he said, "Friends, this is one of the greatest preachers you'll ever hear. He knows the unknowable. He sees the unseeable. He can unscrew the inscrutable." I hope that translates in some way into Indian culture, but it could not be translated into any of the Indian languages, but perhaps you will understand it from an English point of view. So we're going to have to unscrew the unscrutable, and folks, I'm not going to be able to altogether. I will make some lame statements at the end of Job, and then we will bring it to an end. But we're confronting one of the most difficult books of the Bible. This is it's difficult. Its language is difficult. I've read through it 3 or 4 times, which is saying more than is really worthy of that statement. I've labored my way through the Hebrew text of Job 3 or 4 times. I've never been able to get through it without significant help from translations. The Hebrew is so difficult. Roy Zook said it may not even be Hebrew, it may be some dialect related to Hebrew. And there were several dialects in the Middle East that were very closely related to Hebrew. Some of them much more closely than this. I don't know what to do with the book of Job, and I can't even imagine writing a commentary on it, but people have done it. So my hat is off to them. So we've got difficult language and we've got difficult thought in the book. And here's where we set off. There are other kinds of justice than retributive and remunerative justice. We've talked about that. Retributive justice is given to us in Revelation 6:10. Let's look over there at that so you can see, you can have a good verse to talk about retributive justice. Revelation 6:10. And they cried out with a loud voice, "How long, O Lord, holy and true, will you refrain from judging and avenging our blood on those who dwell on the earth?" Retributive justice is attacking the wicked for their sin, and often comes, by the way, men and women, in the form of what we call talionic justice. Do you know this term, talionic? Some do and some don't. The word is spelled T-A-L-I-O-N-I-C. T-A-L-I-N-O-C. I'm sorry, T-A-L-I-O-N-I-C. it's, you know, the idea, if you don't know the term, talionic justice is known from the biblical phrase, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. When someone does wrong, the most extensive punishment you can ask for them is up to the level of what that person has caused you. So if they cause you a financial loss, you should cause them the just response of talionic justice would be to have the equivalent, at maximum, the equivalent financial loss. If they've knocked out your tooth, you have the maximum penalty of knocking out their tooth. You could do something less, but you can't do anything more. So avenging our blood on those who have afflicted us will be bringing death, because these are the folks who are under the altar in heaven, as you remember in Revelation 6. We also have Isaiah 49:4. Let's look at Isaiah 49:4. I need you to have information to help understand these concepts so that you can teach these in your settings, in your ministries. So Isaiah 49:4, but he said, I have toiled in vain. And this is the servant of the Lord speaking. I have toiled in vain. I have spent my strength for nothing in vanity. Yet surely the justice due me is with the Lord, and my reward is with my God. That's perhaps not as good a verse as I might want for that psalm. So let's look at 49:11. I'm sorry, 59:11. I sometimes come back to these and I find that I've mistyped the reference. Isaiah 59:11. This is really retributive justice. I'm sorry, in 59:11, it's really remunerative justice rather than retributive. So I'll get rid of those. But Revelation 6:10 is an excellent verse. Remunerative justice is a different category, as we've said. Psalm 58:11. Where the psalmist says, men will say, surely there is a reward for the righteous. Surely there is a God who judges on earth. So when God rewards the righteous, it will be clear and all people will see, yes, God does reward the righteous. Matthew 25:21 and 34, I trust, are all equally good references. But there is also redemptive justice. Psalm 36:6. This is the justice by which God redeems. So Psalm 36:6. Your righteousness is like the mountains, O God. Your judgments are like a great deep. O Lord, you preserve man and beast. When God acts redemptively, he always acts in justice to do it. And it is a just act. And you would be most aware of this, that the best way for any of us to think about it is the justice done on the cross is justice for us redemptively. Redemptive justice. Then there is covenantal justice. In covenantal justice, you do justice, for example, to your wife when you treat her appropriately to the marriage relationship you have with her, or to your husband, you treat your husband appropriately in light of the covenant relationship you have with one another. When an Israelite, even a stranger who is an Israelite, helps another Israelite, it is an act of justice. It is covenant justice. You are doing what is right in light of the relationship that God has established through the covenant. When we treat one another in the church properly within the covenant, it doesn't mean that we will always be nice to each other, but it does mean that we will always treat brothers and sisters as brothers and sisters. So when they are in sin and we rebuke them, that's covenant justice. When they repent and they are restored, that's covenant justice. Does this make sense to you? Yes or no? Yeah.
Yes. But
so-
any references, brother, biblical reference for this?
Say that again.
Will you give us any biblical
References? The Bible is filled with it. Every place where you have, well, let me take you to Genesis 6 in mind. Not six, sorry. Genesis 4 in mind. What people are in that chapter?
Only one family.
Yeah, who are they? What are their names?
Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel.
Okay. Who was Cain's father?
Adam.
Who was Cain's mother?
Again, Eve.
Eve? You sure?
Sure.
Okay. Just want to make sure you got this down. Who was Abel's father?
Same. Adam and Mother Eve.
Oh. What are the chances they're brothers?
Yes.
That's the definition of a brother, yes?
Yeah.
Yet the text tells us 7 times that they are brothers. See, we always talk about the murder of Abel, but we never seem to acknowledge the fact that the text not only sets up the situation where they are brothers, but it calls them brothers 7 times. It's bad enough that he committed murder, but he murdered a brother. And family loyalty becomes one of the chief applications of the book of Genesis. If you're looking for a major application, it's not the major application, but it's a major application. Everyone who is an heir of Abraham owes just treatment to the brother. In Hebrew, I've lost my train of thought. In Hebrew, there is no word for cousin. There is no word for aunt. There is no word for grandmother, grandfather, grandson, granddaughter. All you have is father, mother, paternal uncle, which is interesting. There is a word for a paternal uncle, and son and daughter, and brother and sister. Those are the only terms that are used in the Hebrew Bible. So every man in Israel is your brother. Every woman in Israel is your sister. Every older man in Israel is your father. Are you with me here? Yes? No? Or your father's father or something. So it's appropriate to call an older man my father and an older woman my mother. If family loyalty is essential, and Hebrew, astonishingly, as much as the Hebrew people value family, they don't have all those relational terms in the Old Testament. So the point must be, if family loyalty is critical, then every man and woman in Israel is your brother or sister. Then you owe family loyalty to all of them. And for example, Sukumar, in the law, when he's talking about, where is that? Well, I can't remember now. You're talking about how you deal with a slave, and a foreign slave that you take as a slave will be your slave for life. But an Israelite slave who sells himself into slavery, you must treat him like a brother in the first place. In the second place, you must release him. And the texts differ. There are different ways of identifying when he's released, either in the sabbatical year or in the Jubilee year. But one way or the other, he's to be released, and he's to go out without any payment because he's a brother, and you're to treat him like a brother. So, Brother Sukumar, the whole law of Moses, especially all the social laws, the things about how you treat others in the nation, are the exposition of this kind of covenantal justice. So it's just essentially the whole Old Testament is addressing this issue for Israel. So
Understood.
covenant, yeah.
Thank you.
And then finally, there is rectoral justice, the justice by which God rules. The foundation of his throne is justice. Yes, the Psalms say. Am I right? Yes?
Yes.
So if that's the case, God rules in justice. Therefore, is God just?
Yes.
Yes. How just is he?
100%.
Can we say again?
100%.
100%. His justice is the measure by which all other justice must be understood. His justice is the defining point for justice.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how just he is. If you want to understand justice, look at what God does. Well, what does God do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he creates, and he gives food and seasons, but he also puts his own son on the cross for wicked people.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just?
Because he has done it just.
Yeah, because I think what you said, brother, is because he has done it, it is just. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, because he's the defining point. So if I'm going to define justice, I have to start with God. I can't start with human legal systems. I have to start with God and say, what does God do? Then what God does is just, but God can do things that are just that we can't do that are and still be just. So one of the things God can do, and we do justly, when one nation goes to war against another nation, the government has the right and obligation to call soldiers to arms and to send them into places where they're going to get killed, and that's just. Are you with me? Brother
Yes.
Sukumar, you're doing this, and I don't know.
No. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So we have some things that we can do. I don't have the right to put you in danger of death, but the government does, because the national well-being is more important than the individual well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so far. So this is rectoral justice. Then is it right of God? Is it just of God to take a man, and we dealt with this in Job 1, and ruin him, as he says, as God himself says to the Satan in chapter 2, ruin him without a cause?
Mm-hmm.
Does God have the right to do that?
Surely.
Yes.
If God has the right to ruin his own son, then he has the right to dispose of the rest of us as he sees fit.
Wonderful.
That's hard for even Christians.
Yeah.
You have been taught, you've had better teaching than many of the people that you will deal with, and you're going to have to prepare them for this. And Job, this is what God is doing. This is not Satan bringing Job to God. It's God asking Satan about Job and then posing Job as a test case. And the test is there anyone who will continue to worship God if he doesn't clearly reward them? And the answer is going to be in the book of Job, yes.
Yes.
There's one man who can pass the test. So God God is worthy of worship, even if he doesn't bless.
Mhm.
Why does God have the right to do these things?
For his glory.
Because he is God.
For his glory.
Yeah. But if I did that in one of my classrooms, because I'm a professor, I have the right to do this, I'm going to make you miserable for a whole semester. The students would be up in arms and they'd be going to the dean and asking for my removal. Yeah. They'd be transferring out of my class. So how come God can do this? How does it come about that God can do this and I can't? And don't tell me because he's God.
Mhm.
The answer, folks, is fairly basic, but it's very important. Excellence needs to be recognized. Would you grant that?
Mhm.
Brother Sukumar, you worked in the steel industry.
Yeah.
And when you had excellent employees, in order to encourage other employees to seek that same excellence, what did you do?
Reward them,
Yeah,
recognize their work.
yeah. So excellence needs to be recognized and it needs to be valued. The extent of God's excellence is infinite. And that means he is worthy of infinite recognition of his excellence. But the only person who can give full recognition of his own excellence is God. And the only way he can do it is by showing in multitudes of different ways the excellence of his being. I pondered several years ago. You know, perhaps that I have a particular love for the book of Romans, and I was pondering several years ago. Romans, what verses are these? Romans 9, verses 28 and 29, or thereabout. They're a particularly difficult pair of verses for a lot of Christians. Where is that? Verse 22 and 23, that's it. What if God, although willing to demonstrate his wrath, oh boy, although, where did that come from? What if God, wanting to demonstrate his wrath and make his power known, endured with much patience the vessels of wrath prepared for destruction, and to make known the riches of his glory upon the vessels of mercy, which he prepared beforehand for glory. In pondering that, as I've done on many occasions over the years, it occurred to me there's something really important going on here, as you would know, but perhaps in a way that you weren't aware of. You see the word mercy there in verse 23. Do you have mercy?
23.
In Romans 9:23, do you have
Yes.
mercy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That
Vessels
word
of
mercy,
Vessels of mercy.
the first time that word mercy occurs in Greek in the book of Romans is in verse 17.
Mhm.
For the scripture says to Pharaoh, for this reason, very purpose, I raised you up to demonstrate my power in you and that my name might be, I'm sorry, it's not that verse.
No.
It's in verse 18. So then he has mercy on whom he desires. Yeah. He hardens whom he desires. That word mercy is coming right out of the passage quoted in Exodus in verse 17. In fact, that verse is a quotation, though my text doesn't show it as a quotation. In Exodus, where this quotation comes from, 4:21, God says to Moses, I will show, and I'll just retain the word mercy for the moment, I will show mercy to whom I will show mercy, and I will show wrath to whom I will show wrath. What's interesting is that in Exodus, the word I will show mercy is the verb hanan, and hanan in Hebrew has a noun that derives from it, chen, and it's the word grace. And it has an adverb that derives from it, hinnam, which is the word for nothing that's used twice in Job chapters 1 and 2. Does Job worship God for nothing without getting paid for it? You caused me to ruin him without a cause, for nothing. Hinnom. I think the word is really grace here. What's interesting is, in addition, that the word continues to appear through chapter 11, and after chapter 11, it disappears from the book of Romans. And when you read in chapter 12, verse 1, I beseech you, therefore, by the mercy of God, it's a different word in Greek. So what I'm thinking is that verses 19 and 20, 20, what is it? I've forgotten already. 22 and 23 are giving us God's purpose in creation in the world. His purpose in creation is to display two specific attributes: grace and wrath. Okay. So far, so good. You understand what I'm saying. I'm not asking, do you agree with what I'm saying? You may certainly suspend belief as long as you wish on this, but folks, have you ever questioned, why would God create a world like this in which sin must occur? When God decided to create, did he know he was going to create a man and a woman?
Sure.
Yes.
Did he know he was going to put them in a garden?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Did he know he was going to put the tree of life in the garden?
Yes.
Did he know he was going to put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden?
Yes.
Very much.
Did he know he was going to give them a commandment?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Did he know they were going to violate the commandment?
Yes.
Then why did he create the world this way?
There is a question.
And I've gotten it from people in India. I've gotten it from people here in America. Well, he was trying to prove free will. Folks, free will doesn't exist. Get over it. Give up this concept. There is no such thing as free will. Let me explain what I'm talking about here. This is all germane to the book of Job. It's asking and answering the question, does God have really the right to do this? And if he does, what is his purpose in ruining a man like Job? Free will doesn't exist. Free will, best definition I know of free will, is the power of alternate choice. In any given situation, when you are presented with a choice, you are always able to choose any of the options. You are not you are not biased in any way by the options. You have full ability to choose any option. Do you really have that? And you'll think, if you're thinking rather simplistically, you will say, well, yes, I have that. I didn't have to come to this session today. I could have done something else. But let's apply it broadly. Do you have the freedom to jump off a building and will to be back up on the top? I want to be back up on the top.
But I'm not assured.
But I don't have I have no free will to be back up on top. Do you have the will to be taller or shorter than you are?
No.
No. Do you have the choice to be of a different ethnicity than you are?
Mm-hmm.
How determinative is your ethnicity in your daily life. It's pretty substantial, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
John Babu lives in Telangana.
Yeah.
And pardon?
Yeah. I'm in Telangana.
Yeah. But he didn't used to. He used
Yes.
to live in Andhra Pradesh.
Yes.
Did you have a choice about the
No.
matter? No.
No.
Your ethnicity changed things. Yes, because your place of living changed things. You could have moved to Andhra if you wanted to, but your whole livelihood, your whole life is tied up here in Telangana. Folks, we really don't have the power of alternate choice except in very minor issues. And so you really don't have free will. So what kind of freedom do we have? The best definition I have for the kind of freedom we actually have is we have the ability to act spontaneously without coercion in accord with our own natures. You have the ability to act spontaneously without coercion in accord with your own nature. I can imitate a dog, but I can't be a dog. It's contrary to my nature. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. In America, people are wanting to become women. They don't have the capacity to become women. It's not in their DNA. You cannot become a woman. You can't ever conceive and bear a child. No matter how much surgery they put you through, you cannot become a woman. You don't have the freedom to do everything you want to do. You never did. Remember when you were a child, we had a saying when we were kids here in the United States: when I get big, I'm going to stay up as late as I want and watch TV all night. Well, now I'm big. And I'm in bed around 7:30 or 8 every night. But when I was vigorous enough to stay up all night, I didn't. I wanted to go to bed because I had things I had to do the next morning, and I wanted some sleep before I went to work. So the fact is that you don't have power of alternate choice. Let's even quit using that expression, free will, and start talking about freedom under God. We are able to act spontaneously without coercion in accord with our own nature. So why did God create the world the way he did? Evidently, Adam and Eve didn't have free will, because if they had free will and could do anything that was really good, they would never have sinned. But they're given the capacity to choose evil. And that's not a good thing. The Bible is the record that every time humanity as a group makes a choice, we always choose wrongly. So why did God create this world as he did? He created this world so he could reveal his grace in this creation. But if all of us got grace equally, we might still know that it was grace, but we wouldn't know what we really deserved. So there has to be, alongside those who receive grace, those who receive full justice for the sin that spontaneously, without coercion, in accord with their own nature, that they choose, and they get the just results of that. Does this make sense to you? Right? So God created the world to show his grace and his wrath. There are aspects of God's character that none of us know and cannot know. None of us can know, because he is an infinite person. An infinite person, especially an infinite person who is infinitely excellent, has the obligation to share his excellence with as many intelligences as is just. So hell will be a revelation of the justice of God that will glorify God forever. Just as you in your redeemed life will glorify God forever, hell will too. But there are aspects of his character we don't know. I have this notion that God has multiple creations he's working with, and we're just one of them. And in those multiple creations, God is revealing all sorts of different aspects of his character that we can't even imagine. And remember that the angels don't understand grace. They're learning grace from us. Yes?
Yes.
Then we may be angels in another creation, learning some new aspect of the being of God. Back to Job now and the issues of Job. Why is God doing this to Job? Because of his own infinite excellence. It must be shown that God is worthy of worship, not because God is self-centered, because God is egotistic. It is because being infinitely excellent, infinite excellence must be recognized, and we must respond to it properly. So that's true in the steel mill. It's true in church ministry. It's true in a business office, and it's true in the infinite working of God in this world. So God has brought Job to his lowest point in order to establish his own right to worship, and that there are people who will worship him whether they understand him or not, whether they are rewarded or not, and Job will be the primary test case of this. So this is how I'm dealing with this book of Job. As I work through this, Eliphaz is going to be pressing the issue of retributive justice all the way through with his parrots, Bildad and Zophar. Job will be reaching out, trying to understand other kinds of justice. He's so locked into retributive justice and remunerative justice, he can't find a way out. But the one thing that we find, and here's where I think Job 42 and the astonishing statements of God help us to guide us through the book, is Job never abandons God. He tries to take his case to God. He can't find him, but all he wants is to be before God and hear God speak. I want to talk to you. I want you to hear me, and I want you to speak to me. And I want God. And that was the one thing that was consistent in Job all the way through the suffering. So as we read last week, shall we receive good from the hand of the Lord and not evil also? And in all this, Job did not charge God with evil with his lips. So now he's going to charge God with evil in chapters 9 and 10. Let me just take you, we have a few minutes left, to Job 9 and show you this. We read Job 9 more as an anthem of praise than as a cry of a suffering man. And we must hear it as the cry of a suffering man. Verse 2, in truth, I know that this is so, but how can a man be right before God? My favorite professor used this statement as an introduction to his segment of his course, which he was teaching on the doctrine of salvation. That's contrary to the use of, that's contrary to the context and the use of this verse in the context. Watch what he does. If one wished to dispute with him, he could not answer him 1 in 1,000 times. Wise in heart, mighty in strength. Who has, what's the next word in your text? Can't hear you. You have your mic off.
who has ever challenged him successfully?
Yeah, my text has defied him. That's a good translation here. Yours is too. To challenge God.
Mhm.
Now, what does God do with his wisdom and might in chapter 9? Let's watch it. It is God who removes the mountains. They know not how. When he overturns them in his anger, who shakes the earth out of its place? What's he doing with his power and his might and his wisdom? What is he doing? Is he building things? Is he putting order into the world? What's he doing with his wisdom and his power?
Mhm.
I think I saw John Bobu. I think I saw you say destruction and something like that. You'll claim it anyway, huh?
Actually, I'm talking with my son.
Oh, okay. All right. So
Not.
I misunderstood. Okay. He's using these for destructive purposes. So even if you could call him to court, look at verse 13. God will not turn back his anger. Beneath him crouch the helpers of Rahab. How then can I answer him and choose my words before him? For though I were right, I could not answer. I would have to implore the mercy of my judge. If I called and he answered me, I could not believe he was listening to my voice. For he bruises me with tempest, multiplies his wounds without cause. And there's that word chinam again, Grace. No cause in me. There's no cause in me. And brothers and sisters, this is what God affirmed back in Job chapters 1 and 2. God affirmed that there is no cause in Job for ruining him. So he's saying the same thing God said. It's harsh, but he's telling the truth. He will not allow me to get my breath, but saturates me with bitterness. If it's a matter of power, behold, he is strong. And if it's a matter of justice, who can summon him? Though I am righteous, the implication of this verse 20 is he would make my mouth accuse me. Though I am righteous, my mouth will condemn me. Though I am guiltless, he will declare me guilty. I am guiltless. I do not take notice of myself. I despise my life. It's all one. Therefore, I say, he destroys the guiltless and the wicked. And in this circumstance, that is true. I don't like it. I wish he hadn't said it. But in the circumstance, this is true. And he goes on like this. Job, as he goes, and we're past the time when I'm supposed to stop talking. Job, as he goes through his messages, his speeches, turns more and more away from the men and more toward just seeking God. How am I going to find God in all this? And so really honestly and truly, through these 3 cycles of speeches, Job really is turning to the Lord. And so Job, in Job 42, when God says, you have not spoken to me what is right, as my servant Job has, Job really is on the right side of this whole thing, though he says some horrible things about God from time to time. But God is able to do horrible things. Hell is a horrible thing. So let's get over our nice, clean, starched Christian piety and get down into the real world where most people live. Okay, I'm done for the day. What questions or comments do you have?
Excuse me.
Yes, Brother Sukumar.
All along, we have been under the impression that God has given Adam and Eve free will.
Yeah.
Now we have you destroyed our thought. today.
Demolished. Demolished.
Demolished. Okay. So now I'm trying to seek for new words to explain the state of mind of Adam and Eve.
They've been given freedom to act spontaneously without coercion, according to their own nature. And their own nature allows them to choose evil.
Mm. Thank you for that enlightenment.
Yeah.
I think I've preached almost 50 years like that.
I know the pain, brother. I learned something. I've preached this wrong for 40 years.
I think the others who are with me now will also agree with me.
Yes, yes.
I have a question adding to that, if it's okay, sir.
Certainly.
No, many Hindu.
Oh no, I have
people-
Eva Paul on the line right now. I need to let her have some time.
Yes, sister.
Sorry, sir. So I just wanted to know, when you're saying like the free will was in the nature, and in Romans also we read the power of sin that comes from the very nature we are living with, that existed in the first Adam and was demolished by Jesus, the second Adam. I just want to know, that's the nature that God created us with, right, sir?
Yes, he created us with the capacity of choosing evil. Otherwise, they couldn't have chosen it.
Right.
So they're acting spontaneously without coercion, according to their own nature. Eve is doing exactly what she wants to do. Adam is doing exactly what he wants to do in the passage.
Right. So
But-
then I
but-
go down to the
Go ahead.
question of nature given by God. So that's there. That's where I understood that part, and frankly to tell you, I was just checking with God also as you were speaking, and this
Yes.
verse came up to me in Isaiah 46:10. It says, "I am God; I will do what I please." Who can ask me? And I just stopped there. I said, "Yes, Lord."
Yeah. And that's the only right response for a Christian to make. A Christian doesn't have the right to define justice the way we want to. I must find out what God thinks justice is and define it that way. So once God has spoken, we are obligated. Brother Anthony.
Yeah, the question to you asked, and finally the answer given by you. Many times I argue with many of my Hindu and other friends. I said, God gave free will because of that only these things. Okay, you gave me answer. Thank you for that. And another question I want to ask you. Okay, God wanted to show His mercy, and that's why He has created man and man. But thing is, many people, He wanted to show mercy, and some people are subjected to severe suffering.
Yes.
Just like Job, just like Job, but they don't have this knowledge. They don't have this knowledge, and sometimes they are very much as they don't have knowledge as Job had. They are discouraged. Sometimes there is scope for them going back and backsliding also.
Yeah.
So how we address this issue?
Well, one of the issues that, as you mentioned it, as you bring this up, that I would want clearly to press upon people is the biblical doctrine of suffering. We have spent no time with that to speak of. As Christians, we like the character of God and the work of Jesus and all of that, but we haven't really paid close attention to what role suffering plays in the Christian life. And yet, Romans talks about it. 2 Corinthians talks about it. I think Colossians does. Philippians certainly does. Hebrews, it's a major theme in Hebrews. James, 1 Peter, these are all, and Revelation. The whole, one of the major points of the book of Revelation is that God's people suffer. And they do it in faith. They trust God right through, but they trust God that no matter how much pain I'm facing, God is still good and is worthy of my worship. And so if there's that much in the New Testament on suffering, we better start teaching our people. There was a missionary who I heard speak a number of years ago, back in the 1980s. He had been a missionary in China when the communists took over and the missionaries were expelled. When they got home, he said, people asked us, if you could go back and to the times when you were there and minister to the people, what would you do differently than you did? And he said, the one thing we did not do is we did not prepare the people to suffer. This has to become a major part of what we teach, suffering well for the Lord.
Yeah. Proper teaching is required on sufferings.
Say again?
Proper teaching is required in the church.
Absolutely.
About sufferings.
To
face these sufferings.
Yeah.
It's a part of Christian life and teaching.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And the kind of suffering doesn't matter. In Romans 8:18, I consider that the sufferings of this present time are worthy to be compared. He doesn't restrict it to suffering for the name of Jesus, that is persecution. Elsewhere he does, but in that passage he doesn't restrict it. So the issue is any kind of suffering, even suffering that comes to me because of my own sin, is still suffering that God is using for my good to produce in me the likeness of Christ. Yeah. So we've got to do this, or the people are going to be unprepared.
Yes.
Sir, can I just share something that helped me on this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was listening to a sermon. I would encourage all of us, if possible, we can hear it. It's by Charles Spurgeon. C.H. Spurgeon. He gave us he had a sermon on God's people in God's furnace, and he was speaking from Isaiah chapter 48 verse 10, which redefined my whole point of view. God redefined it. It says in Isaiah 48:10, I have refined you in the furnace of affliction. So that made a real impact in my life, and I just hope it encourages anybody who wants to hear.
If you haven't read a biography of Spurgeon, you ought to. The man suffered a lot during his life, just a lot. And out of the pain of Spurgeon's life came that marvelous ministry that he had.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Well, Brother Timothy, I turn it back to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Allman, once again. And yeah, maybe we'll conclude the meeting. Yeah, maybe Brother Anthony, can you pray and conclude the meeting, please?
Yeah, brother.
Yes, thank you.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you and praise you for this precious time of wonderful teaching from the life of Job about sufferings and the teaching and your perspective about Job's attitude towards suffering and his arguments and your perspective about his friends and their arguments. Lord, under all circumstances, under all sufferings, may we understand thee properly and we worship thee as Job did. Lord, enable us, give us the strength and give us the strength so that we may glorify thee. Thank you for the teaching, not only just listening, but enable us to implement in our lives and also enable us to teach whatever we are learning in our families, in our congregations, in our organizations, in our assemblies. In Jesus' name, I ask these few things. Amen.
Amen. Okay, good to see you all. Thank you for joining, and I will draw this to a close next week. Don't miss next week. It's going to be important.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Good night to all in India, and have a great day, Dr. Alman.
Right.